All right, it's now time for us to have that very important conversation that I told you earlier regarding rebuilding the tourism sector for the future. Now, COVID-19, so far, the last time I checked, has affected about 63,589,000 people. Lives that have been claimed stand at 1.4 million. The first time this pandemic struck, many thought it was just a health crisis. But over the months, as countries have been trying to mitigate this pandemic, it has proven not just to be a health crisis, but also an economic crisis. Several sectors have been brought to a shutdown. So many people have lost their jobs. And one of the key sectors that are currently facing the challenges brought about by the COVID-19 is the tourism sector. In our country, we have lost millions of shillings just in the few months that we have experienced this pandemic. And joining me now to discuss further on how the tourism sector has suffered courtesy of the COVID-19 pandemic and what the future holds for this very important sector is Raymond Cheruiyot, the Managing Director of Euray Safaris. Thank you so much, sir, for creating time for us.
Thank you so much, Safin, for having me here.
All right, so let's begin on a general perspective, Raymond. As a stakeholder in the sector, we know it's a problem. COVID-19 has affected the tourism sector, but we just want to understand how bad is it? How has it affected you? You can even talk about your own individual experience.
All right, there's no doubt that the effect of the COVID pandemic has been greatly adverse in terms of affecting the tourism sector. And actually, the fact is the 80% that had been projected as growth has gone to the negative. It's almost every single person who's in this business is extremely suffering because everyone else is afraid of getting out. We don't have as many customers as we would have expected. And even the operators themselves, they have a lot of weight in terms of proving to the would-be customers or the would-be tourists that it is safe when you keep yourself safe. So it's 80% on the negative that has brought into this. And we are barely operating on almost what you can call hand-to-mouth.
80% on the negative, that's not a very good figure if you ask me. But let me take you back to 2019. The country was boasting of having received about 2 million tourists. And it was actually projecting that come the year 2025, about 5 million tourists should be trickling into the country. With this rate and with COVID having struck, are we ever going to meet this target, Raymond?
I think with the world building a confidence on the travelers, because every single government right now is trying to build the confidence on the travelers, we think that this is something that we're going to reap on in the future. Possibly in the next 2-3 years, we'd have the comeback of this. But before then, we are still extremely not sure what is going to happen in between the time. We need to look at every tourist that had been projected to come didn't come. So then the shift, like within our country, went to the domestic. And I need to say this, and I need to congratulate Kenyans that they've come out in large numbers, though not as good as it would be or it would be expected. But this pandemic has brought in or has brought out the nature of Kenyans loving nature or to explore the world.
So, sorry to cut you short.
Yes.
Even as you continue, just responding to my question, would you say that we have then over-relied on international tourists as opposed to investing on domestic tourism?
Absolutely. There's been an over-reliance on tourists from outside the country. I think it is about time that we have the domestic tourism revamped so that we have everyone, first of all, building what is within, and now getting to import what is what we're calling the outside tourists. So there has been an over-reliance. That's fine. So the flip side of this COVID is that it has brought a lot of people to realize the potentials that we have within ourselves as a country. And even as we think and as we project, and as every other government is thinking about revamping the safety of the tourists, it's about time that our own, right within ourselves here, that is the Kenyan government, gets to see how do we enhance so that we have every single person, every single Kenyan knowing where, say, the tourist destinations are. Because so many Kenyans don't know their country. I can tell you that for a fact. And we have known this because I've played in it. And when you tell someone about, for example, Chalbi Desert, no one knows where Chalbi Desert is. Mm-hmm. A couple of people don't know where Chalbi Desert is, yet it is within our country. Someone would think that you have to go to Dubai to experience that desert, all right? But
we have it right here.
We have it right here.
We have the gems, the hidden gems about this country right here.
So there's a lot of need of coordination between the national government and the county governments to bring forth what is hidden within. Mm-hmm. All right, because Kenyans, from what I came to learn, they love traveling, but they just didn't know where to travel to.
All right. Let's talk about what COVID is teaching us in the tourism sector. What we saw is several high-end hotels, the local hotels closed down. I'm talking about the likes of Intercontinental, Norfolk. There are so many people in the hospitality industry who lost their sources of livelihoods after being, sent home. I don't know. What is it that we could be missing about how we are driving this sector forward, that maybe in the future when we are faced with such a pandemic or such a crisis, we don't have to go back to ground zero? What is it that we could have missed along the line?
And now that question drives me back to what I've just said. There has been over-reliance. If you look at the hotels that have closed completely, because there are hotels who are operating on a certain percentage, and you have hotels that have completely closed, is because their clientele were totally focused on who is coming in from outside the country. All right? Exactly to the point that I've just said, we would need to trade our eyes on ourselves.
Okay, what do we have within?
What do we have here?
What can work within our bodies?
Yes.
All right, let me ask you about now the future that the tourism sector has. How do we rebuild this industry? Because it has been affected. So what will it take for us to rebuild the tourism sector post-COVID-19?
All right, so one of the key things that needs to be done is absolute focus by the government, knowing that this is one area of revenue, to have it revamped. And how do we do that? We need to do that through, say, tax incentives. We need to have trainings and more trainings on tour operators on what they need to do to make their businesses blossom, so that now they're able to do an attraction from outside. We would also need to have a lot of sensitization within the country about what is it that is available for us, so that every other single person who is in this particular sector would be talking about it, and also when it gets to the common man on the ground, knowing where the gem is, then it becomes part and parcel of us. So that also will earn something that I would call conservancy. We would have a lot of conservancy we should have a lot of conservancy within ourselves, within our communities, for us to be able to build on this particular bit of the future. And most importantly is a lot of partnership between the private sector and the government on both levels, both in county governments and on the national government, because we are looking at the same pot.
All right. Thank you so much, Raymond Cheruiyot, for your time. Unfortunately, we don't have more time for this conversation, but it's an important one that we should carry forward in the near future. We appreciate your insights on the tourism sector. That is Raymond Cheruiyot, the Managing Director of Euray Safaris, talking about rebuilding the tourism sector during this COVID-19 pandemic.